I'm going to call us to order at 1:31 p.m. here on Thursday. Did somebody else woo for a change? Oh my goodness. And there's no one to hear it except our usual. I know Sophie's here. Yay. Thank you for being here, Sophie. Thank you for being here, staff. And thank you all for being here today. It's great to see your faces. It's been so long. Oh, that was the meeting this morning. That was long. So sorry. All right. So I'm calling us to order. Agenda. We do have an amended agenda package. It was on everyone's chairs. Thank you so much for staff for the very quick turnaround on that. May I have a motion to adopt the agenda, please? Oh, I'm so sorry. Thank you, Director Hiltz. I'd like to welcome everyone and thank you for being here today. I would like to acknowledge that we are within the territory of the Sechelt First Nation. My apologies for missing that. A motion to adopt the agenda, please, the amended. So moved and seconded. Any other changes, additions? Please say no. All those in favor? Motion carries. Minutes on pages 1 to 9, regular board meeting minutes of January 10th, 2019. May I have a motion to accept? So moved and seconded. Any errors, changes? Yes, Director Seegers.
I was present at that meeting. My name isn't on the list.
Okay. Thank you. Any other changes? Seeing none. Adoption of the minutes as amended. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion carries. Any business arising from minutes and unfinished business? Yes, Director Seegers.
Thank you. On page 4, talks about the Regional Growth Strategy Options Report, and it talks about a meeting. And I'm wondering if this is the meeting that has already been held or if this is referring to another meeting.
Okay, over to staff.
Thank you, Chair. Staff have held one intergovernmental meeting related to regional growth options and are planning a further meeting with a broader set of officials noted in that recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. And follow-up, Director Seegers?
No more questions.
Oh, please go ahead.
Recommendation 9. Recommendation 9. It talks about the water demand analysis report reviewed in the context of the town of Gibson's providing water to Zone 3 by 2020. I'm just wondering if staff can give us an idea when that information will be coming forward.
Over to staff, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's expected that that will be in the next month.
Okay. And
Final,
once again,
recommendation 10.
Over to staff.
Thank you, Chair Pratt. Is the question is when to expect this one?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So this one staff have not delved into yet. So I will follow up with staff. We've just been focused on all the other pieces, but so I will follow up.
Okay.
Yeah, this is a conversation that's still in the community. Right, so given the water conversations we're having at the board, they're going to be looking for some more information on that. Thanks.
To the rest of the directors, any other questions on or old business arising from the minutes or unfinished business? Okay, seeing none. We don't have any presentations or delegations. Apparently we saved those for this morning. So we'll move on to our reports. What we'll do is, because we have a large number of reports, I'm going to go through them item by item, and if directors would like to pull out any of the recommendations out of those reports, then they can indicate when we get to that particular one. So we're going to start with number 3, Planning and Community Development Committee recommendations of January 10th. Before we move the recommendations, would anybody like to pull anything out of there? Okay, seeing none, I ask for a motion to accept and adopt the recommendations. So moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion carries. Under number 4, Infrastructure Service Committee recommendations, numbers 1 to 11 of January 24th, 2019. Would directors like to pull any of those recommendations out? Director Seegers?
I think we were looking at pulling recommendation number 2 for separate consideration.
Yes, that is one I had on my list. So number 2 will be pulling out of there. Are there any other recommendations that the board would like to pull out to discuss separately? Okay, seeing none. So first off, we'll just move the recommendations except for number 2. All those in, may I have a motion to approve? And seconded, thank you. All those in favor? Motion carries. And then we'll go on to, we'll go to the recommendation number 2 from the Infrastructure Services Committee report on pages 16 to 19. We'll pull it up here. So it's on page 17 of your agenda package, groundwater investigation phase 2 results. And there are, I know there's a bit of commentary around there. I would like to propose a couple of amendments to that, but I do believe the director from Gibsons would like to speak to this as well. So I'll recognize the director.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, just the point on the Mahan well, exploratory well. At the last meeting, I expressed that not concern about the moving towards a feasibility study, and I was in afterthought on that, and after discussing with staff about that, there is concern continued. I think it has to do definitely with the fact that was a correlation between the Mahan well and our own wells, and shown there in the study. And I did draft a letter and had a letter sent. Now, I don't have a copy of it with me. And did a copy come to you yesterday?
Over to staff.
Thank you. It arrived just late yesterday, and we will put it on an agenda and bring it forward as we normally would.
Okay. Basically, what it was suggesting is that we look at working together between the town of Gibsons and the regional district in terms of the Mahan well, and that the Mahan well not be further investigated as an opportunity for an operating well, a production well. And I think there was 4 points in the letter, but I don't have them in front of me, but recognize you do have it. I asked it to be delivered up to you right away. So I'll see if I can find it while we're talking. I know it's on my computer or my phone somewhere.
We do have, I have an electronic copy of it. We won't be able, we can...
I guess it's carry on with the conversation and see if it's important, or we deal with it next time.
Okay, staff just has a comment.
Yes, so again, just as a matter of business, it will be put on another future agenda, and where there will be more discussion and more opportunity to do that. But again, we did receive it. But as I understand, the particular amendments would be aligned with what is being in the correspondence.
Okay. Were there any other comments to the recommendation from Director Beamish? Otherwise, we can go forward with the amendment.
Yes, only in the respect that the town would appreciate recognition that the Mahan site does impact our wells, and that no further work be done on that at this time.
Thank you, Director Beamish. So with that, I'm going to pass the chair over to Director Seegers, and then I would like to propose an amendment to recommendation number 2.
Okay, Director Pratt.
Okay, thank you. So on recommendation number 2, I would like to amend to switch Mahan Road and the Dusty Road sites within the recommendation, so that it would say that the that the Mahan Road site not be pursued at this time, and further that a feasibility report with respect to the production well on the Grey Creek site and the Dusty Road site be brought back to committee in Q4 2019, and further that staff share the Mahan Road data with the town of Gibsons.
Is there a seconder for that motion?
Seconder.
Seconder for the motion?
Director Rowe.
Director Rowe. Any questions by the directors?
If I could just speak to it for,
Okay.
okay?
Director Pratt will speak to the motion first.
Okay. The reason I bring forward the amendment is based on the discussions from the consultant in the report. The Mahan Road well was showing, the test drilling was showing that it was drying on Gibson's wells, as well as the Dusty Creek Road well had a tremendous amount of production value, as well as the water quality from that site was quite good. And I think it's, being that the area of Seashelt is one of our fastest growing areas, I think it's important to look at water within that area and work with the community and the business in that area and see if we can bring more water in that area, and maybe that development within the quarry be held off for more years, or potentially be protected, because it is a very good well, or it's a very good water site from all the data that we received. I think pursuing Mahan as even with a feasibility study, it's created a lot of angst for one of our member municipalities. And I would prefer that we work together as a community and respect the water source that Gibson's has, and then pursue other options. Thank you.
Director
McMahon? Yeah. I'm fine on the Mahan Road site. Changing direction on Dusty Road at this point, I think, is a bit of a change without a lot of discussion, and putting it into an amendment to a recommendation, I'm kind of not thinking this is the best process for having that conversation.
Thank you. Director Ties.
Yeah, pardon me. I'm wondering why Mahan Road should be totally shelved, considering that there could be some conversation between Gibson's and the SCRD, and that there's some potential for coming to an agreement, and as long as Gibson's, I think, is adequately consulted, I don't think it should be totally shelved. And then on the other hand, I also think that that Dusty Road would probably warrant a longer conversation. The contamination seems to be an issue, and I'm not sure as to what extent we'd have to talk to the Seashelt Indian Government District, as well as Lehigh, to even see if that might be even be an option to protect that area. So I think there's a larger conversation that needs to happen.
Thank you. Director Beamish?
I think one of the things with Town of Gibson's, as requested, and I think you'll see them on an agenda in the near future, making a presentation on the water system, and so that I'd like to see that. One of the things in talking with staff is that they're looking at now is actually the feasibility with the current system, the way that it's configured and the volumes that are available, of being the emergency backup to the SCRD in the case that there is a water shortage, feeling that they can actually supply that water into the SCRD. And we want to finish off the bulk water agreement, which would include that component, that we would support the SCRD with emergency water, just like we look at the SCRD to be emergency backup to the Town of Gibson's if anything were to break down in our system. So I think there's a lot of discussion to be had there, and I think we need to have that opportunity to get together and do that, and probably starting it with a conversation with a presentation from our staffs on our water system and the capacity of the system and the future ability of the system to support each other.
Director Hiltz, go ahead.
And in terms of the changing the Dusty Road, my understanding is because it's an unconfined aquifer, the susceptibility to contamination and as a potable water source is fueled with risk. It's a high-risk site. So I'm not including it at this stage. It's kind of a bird in hand. We have a couple good birds in hand already with good potable water. So to bring in a non-potable water source for a potable system doesn't seem to be a place to put effort. The Mahon Road, my concern is the understanding of the aquifer. There's monitoring wells. There's nothing closer to Chaster Well. So the hydrologic connectivity to Chaster Well and Mahon, and then over to the test well on 460, and then down to the lower wells to establish that, I think would serve the overall understanding of the aquifer. So maybe not as a production well, but as a monitoring well, which would help to facilitate the information. As I think having more factual information rather than opinion about how the aquifer performs would be advantageous to understand it, and even going in towards that integrated watershed management kind of model that is sort of floating about. I'm going to say floating. So that's Dusty Road, high risk. Mahon for monitoring, that's kind of where if we wanted to tinker, that's kind of where I would like to see it go.
Okay, I'm going to throw my 2 cents worth in here first. With regards to the monitoring well on Mahon, definitely. When I read the recommendation as it's written and has put forward here, it's that a feasibility report with respect to that move forward at this time. Again, supporting the town of Gibsons, let's monitor it, but not do a feasibility study at this time. It doesn't say that it will never come forward. Above there, we're saying that Mahon Road site will not be pursued at this time. That's all we're saying. That gives us time as a municipality, Gibsons and the regional district, to flesh this out further without Gibsons having to always be on alert about something else coming forward. It also gives a message to our staff and to the community that our member municipality and the work that they're doing is important, and we're willing to support what they're doing. So that's with that one. The other one with regards to Dusty Road. The Dusty Road site, at this point, we don't know what Lehigh's plans are. Lehigh may not be actually taking gravel off in that area for 20 years. We could have a lot of other things in place in 20 years. So doing a feasibility report at this time would actually bring us back that information to say, this is what's happening at that site. If they're going to be logging around there in the next couple of years, definitely we don't want to move forward, but we don't know that information. So that site has the highest volume of water of all of them that came forward. But we're saying, no, we're not going to do that because we don't know what's happening there. The feasibility report will actually give us that information so that we can determine what we're going to do and move forward. It might be that it comes back and we say, no, it's too risky, potential for contamination. But at this point, we don't know that. So I'm totally in favor of the changes as they're made, and we'll leave it up to the board. Any other directors? Director Pan.
We haven't looked at the financial piece of this, of course, because we're going at this point then from 2 feasibility reports to 2 or to 3? To 2. I had originally suggested an amendment to this recommendation that just had wording to make it clear that the SCRD would not put in a production well on Mahon Road without the agreement of the town of Gibsons, which is, I think, the big concern that I have here. On the other one, I don't know. It feels like we're on the fly again. That's just my comment.
Any other comments from directors? Director Hills?
Can we go back to staff to understand a little bit more about why Dusty Road could we just get a little sense from that? Is that
why Dusty Road
was not pursued at that time?
Okay. Staff?
Thank you, Chair. Dusty Road, as mentioned before, was recommended not to move forward given the risk of contamination if the area above it would be developed. There is indeed an option to confirm the feasibility through a more fulsome analysis, and that's something that's called source protection analysis, so that you're really looking at the watershed, what are the risks, and have further analysis there. But that will require our consultant to be engaged as well. That's not something that we can do based on the data we currently have available.
So follow-up question on that. So during the process with the consultant, Dusty Road was ruled out, and so the additional information required to determine if it's going to move forward is not something we have, and we'd have to go back to the consultant? Staff?
Thank you. So just from a process perspective, it's an additional step beyond what the consultant had already done in terms of providing that groundwater investigation. So it's further work that would be required. And should the board pass the recommendations around wanting further feasibility information, staff would have asked also that a recommendation be brought to round 2 budget in terms of helping to pay for some of that source protection. So it's another layer of information that we don't have the skill sets to be able to do, and over and above what we already have been able to. So we would have to engage the consultant. So that's sort of the next step should the board want to go in that direction specific to Dusty Road.
So I'm not clear. In the recommendation that was put forward initially, it was that Dusty Road not be pursued, but that feasibility reports be done with regards to Grey Creek and Mahan Road. Would we have been employing and bringing back the consultant for that work, or has that work already been done? And when was the determination made that those 2 sites go forward and the work be done, but not Dusty Road? Because I don't think that came to the board. No. Thanks.
Thanks for the question. The recommendation on Grey Creek was to further engage with the private owner. So the feasibility there is primarily based on that conversation and the data they might have on the well production. So that's why there's not an immediate need to have a consultant assisting us there. For Mahan, the intent was to primarily work together with the staff of the town of Gibsons to exchange information and determine if there is a collaborative path forward. In terms of Dusty, in terms of the conversations, potential conversations with Lehigh and other partners, that's of course work we can do as staff ourselves. There's no need for consultants to be hired there. But in terms of determining the exact flow of the water, what is exactly the water, where is the water coming from in that area, so what would be the focus of the area of most concern in terms of potential risk of contamination, that's work that our consultant would need to assist us with. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Director Pratt?
Just for a little bit more clarity then. So we had four drill sites, and they all essentially went through the same process to find out the information. And then was Dusty Road dropped off before the other ones went further along the process? Or are they all at this essentially the same part of the process?
Staff?
Thanks for the question. All sites went through this similar screening criteria, so all sites are at the same level in terms of determination of feasibility. Thank you.
Further follow-up? I think what I'm hearing from staff is that with regards to the wells, because the 2 wells, Mahan Road and Grey Creek, actually have additional information that we don't have but is available. We don't necessarily need to go to the consultant for those. But Dusty Road does not have that information because nobody's actually using Dusty Road. There is one well in the area that has been looked at, but not Dusty Road itself. So there's some additional information there to be able to make some decisions. And that is not, expertise is not on staff. Director Hiltz?
I'm hearing what can be get from Dusty Road is a conversation about more information about future uses of what Lehigh's intention is. That's within staff's realm without going for the outside expertise. So I'm going that Grey Creek, there's more known about that site than Dusty Road has a greater level of unknownness.
Is that a word? Okay, so two pieces here. One is, are we in favor of this motion? And then staff is saying, if we are looking to actually have them do some work with regards to the Dusty Road site, they would request that we bring forward a recommendation for a budget item to provide funds for the feasibility work that needs to be done. So I guess it depends on how far the board wants them to take it at this point. Do we want them to have the conversation and find out if we should do the feasibility work? I mean, we've got Monday is when our budget is, so we have a short time frame. Yeah. Staff?
So we can roughly speak to this on Monday, but it would be actually round 2 budget that we would be able to flesh out more of the scope around it.
Director Lee.
I believe I was following the conversation about Dusty Road, but I was going to try and see if I could get a little clarity. From what I understand is that if we had a well there right now, it wouldn't be in danger of contamination because they're not mining above it. So the danger is if the industrial work starts close to, or let's call it upstream of the dam, it could at that point be contaminated. But just in my mind, it sounds like if there was a well there right now, it would be fine until someone started work above it. Do I have that right?
Staff?
This could be right, and that's actually what we try to establish of what is the potential impacts of the current mine site, and I think given their location that might be acceptable, but it will be primarily related to future mining operations in the area.
Does that answer your question, Director Lee?
I think that same statement would be true of all the wells we're talking about because they all are filled up somewhere up off a mountain, and then the question is how far into undisturbed territory are they filled up as they come down? So even with the ones that have the hard top.
Staff?
Thank you for the question. The risk with this one is indeed primarily the fact that it is an unconfined aquifer. So any contamination would directly impact the aquifer, while that's not the case on the Mahan and Church Road sites.
Does that answer your question, Director Lee?
Well, kind of, I guess. But if someone started work way up the mountain and started making a mine way up the mountain, the water still comes from somewhere. So it is possible to even contaminate a confined aquifer, depending on where the industrial activity happens.
Staff?
In a confined aquifer, thank you for the question. In a confined aquifer, the time for the travel time and the time lag between the contamination and the impact could even be thousands of years, where because of the size of the aquifer and the permeability of the ground, while in unconfined aquifer that can be a number of years and even months.
Okay, Director Hiltz.
Yeah, I'm just following up the unconfined aquifer that's in the presentation. My understanding is susceptibility or risk is in all of them. That's why we have groundwater protection and source water protection. But the unconfined aquifers are I'm on one where I live. It's a perched aquifer. Our turnaround is 4 days. When it starts to rain, I have 4 days before the well fills up. Right, so we're highly susceptible as an unconfined aquifer.
Director McMahon.
Dusty Road says 30.7 meters. Mine is 5 meters.
Director McMahon.
I'm just going to point out that we did ask for expert advice, and if we're not going to take it, then I would want a really good reason to not take it.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Director Hiltz?
Could I propose an amendment, a secondary amendment to the primary amendment, which is on the floor, and to tinker a bit?
What would you like to propose?
It was let me just get back to my tinker spot. That they take the production well out of the feasibility of the Mahon to satisfy our neighbors. The Dusty Road be pursued with staff availability. My reluctance to tinker is that I'm looking at 2022 when to expedite whatever we can to get these things in production. We're still 2 years away, so as our consultant says, you can look till the cows come home, but you have a bird in your hand right now, which is the Church Road sites, and the other ones are optional. So I don't want to delay that process. So anything that we put more resources into one means that the resources aren't available to the other ones. That's my concern. But the tinkering, did you get my tinkering?
I think Tracy has that. Do you want to see if you have that?
So the motion on the floor, I'm going to read that back and then we can tinker. That 2019 round 1 budget proposal with respect to the permitting phase for a well field in the Church Road area be brought forward, and that the Mahon Road site not be pursued at this time, and that a feasibility report with respect to the production well on the Grey Creek site and the Dusty Road site be brought to committee in Q4 2019, and further that staff share the Mahon Road data with the town of Gibsons. And then the proposed amendment is to take the Mahon Road out of the production, and that's as far as I got. And the Dusty Road, yeah, but what are we going to do?
Do you want to try and put forward what you were suggesting?
Dusty Road be explored with staff resources, I guess and that Mahon Road not be pursued from a production well point of view at this point in time, but be sought as a monitoring well for providing data with the town of Gibsons.
Okay, I think the first part of that could be an amendment to this motion, but the second part actually changes the motion as it's put forward.
Yes.
Right? So let's look at the first part first and put that in around the Dusty Road piece. Okay, so that the Dusty Road be so that a feasibility report with respect to production well on the Grey Creek site be brought to committee in Q4 2019, and that a feasibility report with regards to Dusty Road be pursued through staff resources only at this time, something like that?
That's what I'm thinking, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what you're trying to continue to look at Dusty Road somewhat.
Yes, but not necessarily, like, to see whether or not we need to go to a consultant and get more information. It may be that we don't need to do that step. It might not be a well that we could actually follow up on at this time. Does that meet your needs? Meet what you're looking to put forward?
To help me support the motion that's on the floor, yeah.
Amendment?
The amendment on the floor, yeah.
Okay. Okay, Tracy, do you want to read the amendment? And then we'll see if there's a seconder for the amendment.
And that a feasibility report with respect to the production well on the Grey Creek site be brought to committee in Q4 2019, and that the Dusty Road feasibility be explored through staff resources.
I would support that amendment.
Okay, we have a seconder for that amendment. Any discussion on the amendment? Director Ties.
I just want to ask staff if they think it's a good idea to have that that budget round 2 option of being able to go back to the consultant, provided that talks with Lehigh and such things are fruitful. So I just wanted to ask staff if they would want that.
Thank you for the question. Staff, with the data and information we have, we can investigate further and consult with the stakeholders, with the other parties involved. However, it might be that the determination is that ultimately some more technical advice would be required, and we would then need to bring back that through next year's round budget, in the next year budget process.
Okay, so what you're saying is you don't want to have that delayed, so you would want to know whether or not staff could come forward with a recommendation to the budget at this point, so that should we want to move forward, we actually have that in the budget. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yeah, that seems to be kind of coming clear to me now, is that we're either deciding, we either have the option of deciding on this in March, or we have an option of waiting a whole year. And I think I'm okay either way. I just want to see if anybody else has has some urgency behind this.
This is on the Dusty Road site.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Leonard? Yeah. Dr. Lee?
This whole subject has me quite interested. The last answer about the Dusty Road being an uncontained and the likelihood of an industrial accident that could contaminate it, I try to figure out how you mitigate the risk of something like that when I consider that our lake, our Garden Bay Lake, is surrounded by a road with trucks on it. Right now, hundreds of trucks a day. Very likely one of them's going to end up in the lake with a full tank of diesel. An aquifer, uncontained aquifer, has got to be very similar to that. And so it's, in effect, you're using a lake. Could someone explain the difference to me?
Staff?
Thank you for this question. I'm not a road safety expert. However, I can understand the concern with respect to there's always a risk of using surface water sources in an area that is used in terms of contamination. There is always that risk. And Garden Bay is one of those areas where that risk is indeed present. And I think in our community we can be really lucky that we have resources high up in the mountain, like Chapman Nappers Lake, that we can use, which are less susceptible for those kind of potential risk.
I guess the question was, though, that if that did happen, can it be mitigated, or do you just plain have to quit using the water?
Staff?
In the case of Dusty Road, to refocus the discussion on Dusty Road, a source protection analysis would actually allow us to, that's where we would ask our consultant to help us with, is to identify those kind of mitigation options. What would be the time lag between the potential contamination and actually that we would see it up in the well? And is it months, is it days, or is it a year, 2 years? And that could help us with determining the risk of actually developing a well there. And yeah.
Director Hiltz first, and then Director Pratt.
I'm going to say something about my understanding of surface water versus aquifer contamination. if you have a fuel spill on a lake, you can see the fuel spill and you can boom it and things like this, remove it. If you have a contamination in an aquifer, it's really difficult to get the contamination out of the aquifer. So that's one of the downsides, because you can't actually see it. Right? This is surface water. You can see it on the surface. Groundwater, you don't know where it goes. So groundwater is just harder to understand than surface water because you can't see it.
Director, I'm going to go to Director Pratt first, and then we'll come back.
If we were to follow through with Dusty Road designated as a water source for our community, apply for a water license, isn't there a great deal of provincial and federal legislation around protecting water, or community water sources, that may help with negotiations with the quarry in this regard?
Staff?
Thank you for the question. There's not. That's the answer. The only potential is a community watershed under Forest Ranger Practice Act, and that only regulates forestry activities upstream of a community water source and not industrial activities. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so Director Rahman?
Just going to say that we have an omnibus amendment here with two separate issues involved, Mahan and Dusty, which makes me somewhat uncomfortable. And so I think we've gotten a little off track.
Okay, so what I'd like to do, I'm going to have Tracy read the whole motion, and then we're going to come to the amendment, and we'll deal with the amendment, and then we'll deal with the motion as amended. So the whole motion, could we do the whole motion without the amendment? Do you have that piece? Okay, so whole motion with the amendment.
That that a 2019 round one budget proposal with respect to the permitting phase for a well field in the Church Road area be brought forward, and that the Mahan Road site not be pursued at this time, and that a feasibility report with respect to the production well on the Grey Creek site be brought to committee in Q4 2019, and that the feasibility report for the Dusty Road site be explored with staff resources, and further that staff share the Mahan Road data with the town of Gibsons.
Okay, so we had the initial motion as presented in our package. We made one amendment to that, which was seconded, and then we made an amendment to that amendment, which has been seconded. So we're going to work our way back. So the amendment on the amendment was the last part, that the feasibility report with regards to production well on Grey Creek site be brought to committee in Q4 2019, and that feasibility with regards to Dusty Road be looked at with staff resources only, or something similar to that. So that's the amendment that we're voting on. All in favor of that amendment? Opposed? We have one opposed. Would you like that recorded? Okay. So that amendment has passed. So now we are voting on the motion as amended with the amendment. So this would be something like the Infrastructure Services Committee recommended that a 2019 round one budget proposal with respect to the permitting phase for the well field in the Church Road area be brought forward, and that the Mahan Road site not be pursued at this time. And further, that a feasibility report with respect to the production well on Grey Creek site be brought to committee in Q4 2019, and that a feasibility report with regards to Dusty Road be looked at with staff resources only. That's the motion that's on the floor. All those in favor of that motion? We have 5-7, okay. All those opposed? And would you like that recorded? Thank you. Okay, that motion is complete. We are done with that conversation. And I'm going to turn the chair back to Director Pratt. Thank you.
I've been giving you've got all the hard stuff today. Thank you to the board for that conversation, and thank you very much to staff for your patience on that. We're going to move, that was all of item number 4, Infrastructure Service Committee recommendations. So we are now going on to 4A, one of the late agenda items, the Corporate and Admin Services Committee recommendations, numbers 4, 6, 10, 11, 12, and 22 of January 31st, 2019. Would the board like to pull anything out of there at this time to discuss separately, or would you like to move everything at this time? Oh, there was one of those motions, sorry, I almost forgot. On page 19C, there, sorry, I'll find it. Page 19C, I have it written in mine. Page 19C, there was, after everything was printed, staff realized that there was a piece missing. I'm going to go over to our corporate services to explain what that was.
Thank you, Chair. Just in recommendation number 22 on page 19C, we should add a clause that the funding request be referred to round 1 budget. That was just an omission from our minutes from this morning and should be corrected at this time.
Yes, Director McMahon.
I just had a process question.
Certainly.
So I voted against the chiller replacement this morning.
Yes.
So would I need to pull that to vote against it now?
Yes.
Okay, I'd like to do that.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Do you want to pull that one out, that recommendation out, then out of when we're voting for the package as a whole?
Given that we just got this, I'd just like to request that we just have half a minute to read through this.
I'll allow.
Before we pass this on.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we'll let everybody have 2 minutes to read through. Yes, Director McMahon.
In recommendation 11, we've asked Greedo to monitor and evaluate involvement in this program. I don't think involvement is the right word. Something more like outcomes was what I had in mind. I don't know how you really monitor involvement other than it said, we're doing this.
Director Hiltz?
Like results?
Results? I think that was fairly clear through the conversation that we had that involvement and results could be a fair, if I'm going to look to the board to see if there was anything different than you wanted to, than results. Director Seegers.
Well, I like the results piece. I'm wondering, do you want to indicate a timeline in here? When do you want the report back? After a year? After, right? Because this is a pilot program. I don't know how long it's running, but not monthly.
Yeah,
Director McMahon.
It could be part of their annual reporting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm hearing then is a report back to the SCRD board as part of their annual report. Process-wise, is this okay that we're doing this? Okay, good. Looking to staff. Any other comments or questions on the recommendations that we spoke to earlier today?
So I'll make that amendment to that motion. So the
Do we
recommendation.
need to do it as an amendment? Because,
Yes.
we do. Okay.
Okay. As amendment, so evaluate results of this program and report back to the SCRD board as a part of their annual reporting
Okay.
process.
So moved and seconded. Who would like to second it? All those in favor? Okay. Motion carries. Okay, so recommendation number 11 has been amended. Yes, Director Seegers.
Thank you. Recommendation number 4, the arena floor surface scheduling. I understand that April 30th for ice time is what is current practice, but this recommendation will be going out to the public. So I was wondering if we still wanted to include that we were looking at ice to April 30th in this recommendation, so that everybody's clear that that's what's happening this year. Because I think we asked for that, but it's not in the recommendation, so I'm just looking for.
To staff,
So staff recall a lengthy discussion, but in the end, the committee decided not to put a date in it. But it was understood that that's what we were looking at. But that's part of the discussion now again.
And was it in the motion?
I believe it was in the motion, so I think I'd like to make a recommendation or amendment to this.
I'm looking to GM Hall because I'm pretty sure he said April 30th was what the plan was for this year anyways.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, that's correct. From staff's point of view, a motion that makes that intention that much more clear is welcomed. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So I hear an amendment to add keeping ice and a commitment to keep ice until April 30th, 2019.
Yes.
Okay. And so,
and
directors,
that would be before the
and that.
No, I'd have it right at the beginning. The Corporate Administrative Services Committee recommends that ice be maintained in one facility to April 30th of this year. It is one facility that we typically keep it in, is that not? Or two facilities. Ice being maintained to April 30th, to leave it like that.
Yeah.
As per current policy, and that the decision to extend the arena ice season be deferred pending a staff report to a February committee meeting with analysis of the feasibility, financial implications, and schedule. And then it come forward.
Okay.
Okay.
And do we have a seconder for that? Seeing it seconded. Any further discussion? Yes, Director Beamish.
Clarification, is that April 30th every year or just 2019?
2019.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question on that amendment. All those in favor of that amendment to the recommendation? Those opposed? Okay, motion carries, or the amendment carries to that recommendation. Any other adjustments to the recommendations brought forward from this morning? Yes, Director Seegers.
I'll make a motion that we adopt all the recommendations except 6 as amended.
Okay, and may I have a seconder, please? Seconded. Any further discussion on that motion? All those in favor? Thank you. Motion carries. We'll now move on to recommendation number 6, the arena chiller replacement. May I have?
I'll move recommendation number 6.
Move recommendation. Seconder, please. Seconded by Director Ties. Any further discussion on that motion or on that recommendation? Director Hiltz? Oh, you're listening over there. Oh, sorry. Director McMahon.
I'm just going to say that I'm going to vote against major infrastructure investments until we get to our zero emissions plan. So it's my little statement.
So noted. Thank you. Okay. Any further discussion on the recommendation on the floor? Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor? Those opposed? Thank you. And would you like that recorded? Okay. Recorded. Thank you. Okay. We're going to move on to number 5, and there's a, if you go on to, there's a new replacement Annex D, and I'm going to go over to our Corporate Services Officer, please.
Thank you, Chair Pratt. So the SCRD's Advisory Planning Commission bylaw states that appointments to the commissions will be made at the last board meeting in January. On page 21, you will see the list of appointees that are recommended by the individual area directors for confirmation by the board, and the remainder of the recommendations are outlined on page 20. Thank you.
Any questions from staff, or certainly, or pardon me, from the directors? Sorry, Director McMahon.
I'm just going to speak to rescinding the Area E appointment for Patrick Fitzsimmons, is that he has not attended in 3 years at the APC, and in future I would like to see us amend the bylaw so that people who don't actually show up can be removed. But so that's the reason for rescinding it. We have a seat, and I need it because we have volunteers.
Always fantastic to have volunteers. Director Seegers.
This is just a process question. Given that we've just been provided with a revised Attachment A, which has additional names in Area E added, that, you know, to what was in the report, how will this information actually be put out publicly on our website such that somebody looking at this report will actually have the accurate information and not the stuff that's part of the agenda?
Over to staff.
The amended agenda is posted on the website. There is a slight delay today because of some timing issues and resources on staff availability, but the revised report will be on the agenda, and the board minutes will of course be made public, and all of the applicants will be advised of the outcome.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, any other questions? So we have recommendations on page 20 that the report titled 2019 Advisory Planning Commission Appointments be received. Oh, sorry, over to Director Hiltz.
Yeah, it's a process question. Of the number of people who had applied and were not appointed, is there an attempt to kind of encourage them to participate, to show up at these things? If people are interested, do we not want to encourage them? That, you know, this is what I'm wondering. How does the non-selected people?
Well, all APC meetings are public, so of course they're welcome. They're not part of the decision-making process. I mean, I've been to APC meetings as a member of the public before, and I would say it would be part of your director outreach to anyone that did apply, to continue to encourage them to be involved and continue the conversation. Staff, if you can comment how it's been done in the past, please.
Thank you, Chair Pratt. I support your comments. I agree with them. My communication with applicants who are not selected to serve is strictly that thank you for your interest in community planning. We receive more applications than there were spots available, or something along those lines, and any further follow-up would generally be done by the area director, or if there was further direction given to staff would take that on.
Thank you. Okay. Does that answer your question, Director Hiltz?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. So if we're ready, we're going to go on to the recommendations on page 20 of Replacement Annex D, that the report titled 2019 Advisory Planning Commission Appointments be received, and that Patrick Fitzsimmons' appointment to Area E APC be rescinded, and that APC members be appointed for a 2-year term unless otherwise specified as per Attachment A, and further that letters of appreciation be sent to outgoing members. And may I have a mover, please? Oh, moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion carries. Okay. All right, moving on. We now are on the Chief Administrative Officer's report. And so I'm going to go over to our CAO, please. CAO Levies.
Thank you, Chair Pratt. So this is a report that's brought forward monthly, and I'm happy to take any questions that the board might have.
Okay, may I have a motion to receive the report, please? So moved and seconded. Okay, thank you. All those in favor? Motion carries. To the directors, any questions on the CAO's report? Okay, Director Lee.
Under the administration, it's looks like we're getting a report from Modi on the right-of-ways March or April. Would that be the report we're anticipating? Might it allow us to go ahead with building the bike paths?
Over to staff.
Thank you, Chair Pratt. So yes, this is the work that the CAOs in the 5, counting myself, regional districts have been working with through AVICC. So we are making some progress, and so we're looking to report back to our individual boards in that window of time. So yes.
Okay. Director Lee, did you have a follow-up, or that answered your question?
No, that was a good answer. Thank you.
Great. Okay, over to Director Rowe, please.
I'd like to hear more about On the Go with the CAO. And I just want to note that in the report it was held in December 2019.
She time
so
traveled.
Is it future focused? Can you tell us what it looks like?
Over to staff, please.
Thank you. I suppose we all wish we had that talent. CAO On the Go is meetings, a series of meetings that we've been holding for almost 3 years now, 3.5 years. And generally we have them we have 3 to 4 a year. And so the next round would actually be occurring in April is when it's scheduled. So we solicit topics from staff. There are approximately 11 staff meetings across all of the different work sites. So some of them are very early in the morning to accommodate work schedules. Some of them are later in the day, in the evening. And they're things that staff want to hear about, what's going on, and then it's an opportunity for them to ask questions. So we've generally had a really, really good participation from staff on these, so well received.
Okay, any other questions for the CAO? Director Ties.
Just in that report, one thing that I didn't see was any kind of outreach and relationship building with other governments and I'm just wondering if any of that happened, and maybe you can include that next time, or is that in a different report?
CAO?
Thank you. So these reports are generated once a month, and so they often include things that have been occurring and some things that are future looking. So it's a balance. So they do appear. I do report out on them when they happen. So this is just for a very specific set of time frames. That's all.
Thank you. Directors, any other questions? Any? Director Hiltz?
Okay, so this is a monthly report then? Okay. Not rather than an annual, it's a Chief Administrator's monthly report.
Correct, and it generally always appears at the last board meeting of the month.
Okay, Director Beamish.
Yeah, following up to Director Ties' question, I think that possibly appropriate under strategic priorities, and you've got enhancing collaboration with the Sechelt and Squamish nations, similarly with the municipality of Gibsons and Sechelt would be useful for collaboration type enhancements, I think, so if that was possible.
CAO?
Thank you. So the strategic priorities are from the last strategic plan. That's why they're referenced there and they're specific. So once this board approves of a new strategic plan, then those are the focus areas or the priorities that will be included there.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you for the report. We are now moving on to motions. We have a notice of motion from Director Ties. Director Ties, would you like to speak to or move your motion? We'll look for a seconder and then you can speak to it.
Okay. The motion that I'd like to bring to the table here is that the Ministry of Forest Lands, Natural Resource Operations and Rural Development, and the Ministry of Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation be contacted to ask for active involvement as a full partner in the dialogue regarding land use planning processes, foreshore agreements, resource management within the district, and any agreements that require the provision of services by the SCRD between the Shishal and Squamish nations and the provincial government.
Okay, and a seconder for that motion? Okay, seconded by Alternate Director Rowe. And then Director Ties, please speak to it, and then I'm just starting a speakers list.
Yeah, so just coming out of that presentation that we had from the Ministry of Indigenous Relations, it seemed like they're still fairly nebulous as to how to engage in the land use planning processes between First Nations and the provincial government, especially regarding the still fairly new what's the name of the agreement called? The foundation agreement with the Sechelt Nation. So I think it's just a good idea to follow up on that and make sure that we would like to be part of that discussion in an active way, and that it's not just a referral process, but that we are actually full partners at the table.
Thank you. Director McMahon.
Just a little wordsmithing, because it doesn't say who's being asked to be involved here. So you mean be contacted to ask that the SCRD be involved as a full partner in the dialogue, is what we're asking. Or did you mean local government?
I think that the SCRD, but also the municipalities should be involved. So local government would probably be the best description.
Okay, so let's look for an amendment to where exactly you'd like it to be then. Director Seekers.
Ask for active involvement by local governments as full partners in the dialogue regarding land use planning.
Okay, and Director Ties, do you want to second that as an amendment? Okay. Director McMahon, does that work for you? Okay. I'm going to call the question, or ask about anybody wanting else to speak on the amendment. Director Hiltz. Not on the amendment? Bringing in local government? Okay. All right. So we're on the amendment about adding local government after active involvement with local government. Okay, I'll call the question on that. All those in favor? Those opposed? Okay, that amendment carries. So moving on to the amended motion, Director Hiltz.
The one part I'm kind of struggling with is full partner. And in our kind of training with reconciliation and Indigenous cultures, they don't necessarily, my understanding is local government isn't an equivalent government. We're not, so it almost feels like we're imposing that we are an equal government, like the tripartite rule about federal, provincial, and Indigenous. And I'm wondering if this is our lane to be called a full partner. That's kind of what I'm trying to be sensitive to what full partner means. And it says we want to be in, that's the impression I'm getting. And I'm not sure if that's our lane to say we want to be in this as a full partner. And I'd really love to hear if Director Julius was here to understand the point of view from what full partner means to them as a government. So that's a point of conversation. Is full partner the tone that we're trying to put forward, or something more different?
Would you like to propose an amendment to drop the word full from that sentence, or from the motion?
I'd like to hear Dr. Tyus' what his point of view on full partner, what he was understanding that to mean.
Okay, I'll go over to Director Tyus.
Yeah, I see Director Hiltz's point, and I would make that motion to drop the full and then go with partner at this point. And if anybody else has comments.
You'll make that as an amendment then to your motion?
Yeah.
And seconded. Any discussion on that? Removing the word full? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion carries, or motion on the amendment carries. Going back to the amended motion, twice amended motion, is there any further discussion on the amended motion on the floor? Okay, seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. None opposed. Thank you, Director Ties, for crafting that. And that motion carries. Amended, as amended did twice. We now have number 8, notice of motion from Director Ties. Director Ties, please, if you can move your motion, and we'll get a seconder, and then we'll bring it on the floor.
Okay, I'd like to make the motion that staff provide a report to the board regarding any past initiatives regarding an integrated watershed management approach, including but not limited to 1, the SCRD Joint Watershed Management Committee, and 2, the Shishal Nation and the SCRD Water Committee.
And do I have a seconder for that? Seconded by Director Seegers. And I'll start the speakers list with Director Ties, please.
Thank you. Yeah, there at the strategic planning meeting, we got a handout from the district, from the town of Gibson's, that spoke towards an integrated watershed management approach. And then, as I was doing some more research, I also came upon the Cowichan Water Board and how they approached watershed management. And I think it would be great to have some discussion towards getting an integrated watershed management approach going that would include the provincial bodies and somebody that we can talk to on a regular basis regarding our watershed, so that we can then move forward with protecting our watershed, as well as making sure that all stakeholders are part of the conversation. And I think the first step would be to get some more information from staff as to what has happened in the past. I believe there's been quite a bit of history in regards to this, and so I'd like to be filled in on that.
Okay, thank you. Before I open it up to more directors, I'm going to go to staff first to see comments on the motion on the floor, please.
Thank you, Chair Pratt. So staff are supportive of this and think it'd be worthwhile to bring the information forward that would just help inform the discussion in terms of how the board would like to move forward.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Director McMahon.
I just wanted to forestall the possible appearance of the word fulsome by suggesting that the word succinct is a good word too. This could be a monumental report, the size of the Vancouver phone directory. So as much as you can, if you can boil it down to the essentials, that would be lovely.
Okay. Any other comments from directors? Director Beamish, please.
I'm just wondering if there's, if we are somewhat foreclosing on this, if we include the word past, maybe there are initiatives that are in the mill now that should be considered as well. And just say regarding any initiatives regarding an integrated watershed management and drop the word past, because I know there's discussions going on as well with the town and things like that. So.
Are you proposing that as an amendment?
I'd propose amendment to drop the word past.
And seconded by Director Seegers. Discussion on that amendment? Okay, I'll call the question on the amendment. All those in favor? Those opposed? Okay, the amendment passes. We've got a lot of amendments today. Okay, and any further discussion? Director Hiltz.
Timelines. There's no date on that. So do we want to narrow it down to 2035 or like something sooner, depending on capacity?
Okay, I'm going to go to staff first and then over to Director Ties.
Thank you. So staff would recommend that we could bring this forward in Q2, and it gives us a little bit of flexibility. Q2 is just post-budget, and so Q2 of 2019. Sorry, in that window.
Okay, and would you like us to add that in as an amendment, just so it's there clear? Okay. Director Ties, your thoughts?
Yeah, I was just saying that this is something that's aspirational and forward-looking, and that we currently have a lot of things to deal with. So I was going to defer to staff on that.
Okay, so would you like to make the amendment in Q2 2019?
Sure.
Okay, and seconded by Director Seegers. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment for the timeline? Thank you. None opposed? Okay. Any further conversation on the amended motion? Amended? Seeing none? Don't give me, I've already got the giggles. It's a done day. Okay, seeing none, I'm going to call the question on the amended motion. All those in favor? And those opposed? Seeing none, we will pass that motion unanimously. That's fantastic. Oh, great. Bylaws. Woo! How's everyone doing? Okay. So, number 9 on our agenda is the Sunshine Coast Regional District Administrative Fees and Charges Amendment Bylaw, number 627.3, 2019. So we are going to see if we can get through 3 readings and adopt it. So we're going to start with that the bylaw be read for the first time this 31st day of January 2019. So moved. And seconded. All those in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. And read for, I'm sorry, I should have asked staff if there was anything else to say on this. No, okay. I think we had a good discussion on this one already. Read a second time, this 31st day of January 2019. So moved. And seconded. All those in favor? Motion carries. Read for a third time, this 31st day of January 2019. So moved. And seconded, I see. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carries. And move to adoption this 31st day of January 2019. So moved, seconded. All those in favor? Motion carries. Well, it's only the 31st day of January. Okay, so page 28 of our agenda. And number 10 on our agenda list is the Sunshine Coast Regional District Water Rates and Regulations Amendment Bylaw, number 422.32, 2019. That's pages 28 to 36. Once again, this is another, it's a weighted vote. I should have mentioned that last time. It was weighted vote, but we had unanimous anyways. So we are going to move, does staff want to say anything about this one first? Or I think we've all had a fulsome discussion already. Okay, so, oh, sorry. I promised I wouldn't use that word. Succinct discussion. Wholesome. It's like sinkholes. We're not going to tell you that. Read a first time this 31st day of January 2019. So moved and seconded. All those in favor? Okay. Motion. Those opposed? Not seeing none. Motion carries. So read a second time this 31st day of January 2019. So moved and seconded. Thank you. All those in favor? Okay. Those opposed? Motion carries. And read a third time this 31st day of January 2019. So moved and seconded. Any further discussion on this? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Perfect. Motion carries. And move adoption this 31st day of January 2019 to the person to my right. And seconded. Thank you. All those in favor? Thank you. Motion carries. All right. So we're going to move on to director's reports. And I've mixed up the order a little bit today. So Director McMahon from Area E, you'll be first on my docket, please.
I had a feeling that was coming. So, since the last time we did director's reports, we've all been busy. Some of the places that I've been are the Regional Hospital District meeting at Sechelt Hospital, strategic planning, the forestry webinar, the Gibsons Library Board meeting, of course, the LGA LA conference in Richmond, the Agriculture Advisory Committee, the Reconciliation Workshop, the Area E APC, and of course all of the other committee meetings and board meetings that we've held. I visited the beach cleanup organized by volunteers from the Elphinstone Community Association, whom I want to commend. They have put big totes down on the beach at intervals, and they're inviting the public to put in garbage, especially styrofoam that they find on the beach, and those totes will be collected in the middle of February. But that's a great initiative, and I recommend it to other community associations to take it on. I've done a bunch of other things too. I updated my website, sent out a newsletter. I answered inquiries from residents about potholes, dog licenses, oil pollution, invasive species, fire services, you name it. And in that regard, I will be making a motion at budget about director pay, because the rural director stipend is $25 a week, and I figure I'm making about $1.50 an hour at that rate. I think it's a laughable amount relative to the workload that rural directors and the responsibility that rural directors are expected to take on. So rather than get into a whole revision of the pay schedule for the board, which is a can of worms, I'm just going to suggest that we start by doubling the rural director stipend. Yeah, so that we'll make $3 an hour maybe. It'll be so great. It's still a drop in the bucket, and at some point I think we need to address the whole question. But anyway, I guess that's sort of a notice of motion. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Director McMahon. And I've seen the bags on social media, a lot of posting about that. It's a great idea. I know other jurisdictions, I think down in the States, I saw one where they have a fish, this big sculpture fish that's clear it's been made out of chicken wire, and everyone's encouraged to throw plastic in there, and then it's emptied by the city daily, which is it's kind of a neat thing. I'll send it to you. But thank you very much for your report. You've been very busy, and I've appreciated getting your newsletter as well. So next on my list is Alternate Director Rowe.
Oh boy. I'd like to actually shout out to Director McMahon on her newsletter. Awesome job, and to see your face. I'm sure that the people in your area really appreciated it, because as a member of District Council of Sechelt, I did. So mine's going to be short, because honestly, working full-time and sitting in Tom's chair for the last month and being on council, I'm just doing all I can to read and keep up. So that's all I've been doing, sorry to say. Answering some emails and getting ready for what happens the next week. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to the Town of Gibsons and Director Beamish.
I attended many of the same meetings that Director McMahon did, so I won't repeat that. But just some of the other things with Director Seegers and Chair Pratt, we attended and participated in naloxone training program, for which we got certificates and needles. So we have our own needle kits now, and so that was very useful. And I've actually followed up with Carrie Miller to invite her to come to Gibsons to make a presentation at council. So we look forward to that. And like Sechelt, I'm going to make that opportunity available to our outside staff to take that same training, and very useful. I met with a medical health officer earlier in the week, Jeff McKee, and had a good conversation about issues with him. He's followed up on a couple matters for me already. I met with the RCMP, looking at the RCMP policing on the coast, and had about an hour conversation with them. We are, as you know, getting ready to anticipate 5,000 population, and so very shortly we're striking a committee that will be looking into that for the town. The terms of reference have been drafted. They may actually be on the agenda for next week. I haven't been at the office long enough to find out, but they have been drafted. So we met with the fire chief and reviewed some issues with him, and then subsequently we had the presentation from the consultants and the fire chief on the fire department's report as well as emergency planning, and that was dealt with. And we've been continuing in town orientation and getting ready for town budget process. So again, busy here, busy there. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Beamish. I'm going to move on over to Director Ties.
Thank you, Chair. And yeah, well, we've all been busy. A big thank you to staff for putting up with, I don't know how many motions I've put through in the last week or two, or at least proposed. It's been a lot. And a couple of them have made it on the agenda already. There'll be more, don't worry. And a big thank you to Nicholas Simons, who helped us get the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure to the Largo Road site and do a site visit with us. And that was well received by the residents there. The outcome not so well received, but that it happened was a good thing. And yeah, met with the APC as well. And then the LGLA forum was great. There was some good connections being made internally and externally, and it was good to get to know each other a little bit better as well. And on the weekends I've been up at Dakota Ridge and been coaching some of the jackrabbits up there. So if you haven't checked out that SCRD facility in the last little while, it's worth going up there right now. Some great sledding going on, and or just go for a snowshoe or cross-country skiing. So I've been really enjoying that, and with the nice weather especially. And looking forward to budget in the next little bit, but there's also there was something else I was going to say. Well, anyway, we'll move on from there. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Ties. Okay, over across the table to Director Hiltz.
Thank you, Chair Pratt. Head, heart, and wallet, I guess. I don't know. The LGA, the Local Government Leadership Academy, I was really totally impressed by what kind of a local government has developed in British Columbia over 50 years, and that some of these organizations have formed out of crisis, Municipal Insurance Agency Association, and so there's a real depth that even though I've been in worked in local government for over 20 years, to see how all these parts come together, and so much is happening behind the scenes was really useful. And I picked up a lot of these nice little gems, like don't lose your mind. I like that one. No point screaming at the sky because it's raining. I like that one too. And that the seasoned people talk about the ebb and flow. There's good times, there's bad times. Sometimes things move forward, sometimes they don't. And nobody gets into this job to wreck your community. So yeah, I took a lot of value from that. Yeah. So that's it.
Thank you. I'll go over to my right, and Director Seegers, please. What have you been doing?
It was nice when you guys were away. There were no meetings here. What have I been doing? Oh my God. Lots of things that you've all mentioned. I'm just going to mention a few more. The blanket exercise. right? A number of us took part in a blanket exercise with staff, et cetera, here. It was a great, it's an awareness, right? It raises awareness and, I guess, empathy between different cultures. So thank you to staff for arranging that. What else? We have a regular community association meeting. So the council meets with our community association leaders once a quarter, and we're going to be continuing that on. And then, so the community associations can bring things to us, we can bring things to them. We'll be exchanging, information so that they can take it back to their communities as well. And we have a bunch of projects coming forward, like our new zoning bylaw, subdivision and development control bylaw, sign bylaw, a number of these things coming forward. So what we're going to do is bring them to this committee where they can then take them out to their community associations for input and bring that back. So it's going to be kind of a two-way street around communication. One of the things I wanted to mention, our Sechelt member is not here today. You may or may not be aware that in their community, they had 6 fluent language speakers. They were all elders, and the 3 female, 3 male. Within the last 6 weeks, the 3 females have actually passed away. So I attended one of the funerals, 2 of the funerals, I believe, already, and the other will be coming up. But that's been a huge hit on their community. So, reach out to them and express your condolences for that. What else has been happening? I attended the Agricultural Advisory Committee meeting. Haven't been to one of those before. So that is something that we may want to look at again going forward here to see if it's something we wanted to continue to support. They understand that their terms of reference have them wrapping closer to the end of this year. And there was a meeting that same evening, that was on the 22nd, where they are setting up an agricultural institute on the coast here. So, we're going to need to look at how the two play together and whether or not the Agricultural Advisory Committee would want to continue. I've been meeting with developers. A number of us attended the AGM for the Sechelt Chamber and met with Mark Collins, the CEO of BC Ferries, laid out a bunch of the concerns that our residents have up and down the coast. What else? The water treatment tour was really fun. It was great to see. And then one of them actually works at one of the restaurants here. So I ended up going to that restaurant that night, so it was great. Saw her there. What else? We're dealing with Sea-Watch in our neighborhood. So we've gotten a report back from the geotech, so we're going to be talking with residents again. The naloxone training was great. Oh, and then yesterday, Chair Pratt actually arranged for a few of us. There were 4 positions open. So Mayor Beamish, I, Chair Pratt, and Dave Chisholm from the Sunshine Coast Regional Economic Development Organization did a forestry tour. So we didn't get everywhere we wanted to go, but it was giving us a view of the impact and of forestry on the Sunshine Coast. So what it contributes to our community, what their issues are, and what we could potentially do moving forward. So we started out down at West Coast Log Homes, and we had a conversation with a few of the people involved in forestry here. That took a couple of hours, and then we toured their facility and we went to Log Sort and walked around the Log Sort and heard what they're doing. And when we were there were actually logs coming in from Haida Gwaii. So the Log Sort down in Port Mellon area down there is one of the biggest in BC. And logs come in from all over BC. So that was quite interesting. Then we went to and did a tour of the sawmill that's just across the parking lot here from us. They're actually shut down right now. They're revamping. up to this point have only been cutting cedar. They're rejigging their operation so that they'll be able to cut any lumber. One of the things that is of concern to them is they are the only mill on the Sunshine Coast, right? The only sawmill on the Sunshine Coast, and they can cut up to 5,000 cubic meters of logs a month. Now, to give you some perspective, the community forest, their yearly cut allocation is 20,000 cubic meters. That's for the year. And this sawmill can cut 5,000 per month. So they're actively trying to find supply to keep running and keep in operation. So we had some conversations around how we could potentially work with them going forward. So there's lots of work to do there. They're going to be contacting us when they're up and running. They figure about March-ish, they're going to be up and running, and we're going to do a lunch and learn. So we'll actually set up, they'll contact us when that's happening, and we'll set up a luncheon, and then we can go over and actually see them in operation. So you can all have a tour.
You can walk down across the parking lot.
You can walk across the parking lot, yes. Okay, I think that's it. The District of Sechelt, we did an e-town hall meeting on our budget, so with the community. We will be looking at doing some work on our strategic plan. Staff have had our strategic plan. They're bringing it back this coming week. We're going to be doing like a workshop around that. We're also going to be doing a workshop around our budget, so staff and council, to start moving those forward. I think that's it. We're going to LGLA next week. So enjoy it while we're gone. Thanks.
2 weeks from now. Yeah.
2 weeks from now. Sorry. 2 weeks from now.
Yeah, the 12th. There, because, municipalities are the first part, and then the electoral areas overlap. Director Lee, it's your turn.
First off, there was a PODS open house on January 22nd at the Sarah Ray Hall. It was lively because, of course, PODS, Sarah Ray Hall's in Irvins Landing and PODS is in Irvins Landing, and there's a lot of concern about traffic on quite a poor road, and a lot of concern about not enough parking. But it was pretty civilized, and it was interesting. Lots of good feedback. They didn't quite get what the rezoning was all about, because the place is commercial, and all you're adding is one additional function to the uses that are already there. And then late in the meeting, a local businessman spoke up. He doesn't usually talk much in public. And he pointed out that it's a commercial property, and it's an extremely valuable property. So you're not talking about whether there's going to be development or not. You're talking about the kind of development you're going to get. And everybody thought about that, and things really quieted down at that point. But I mention it because there's another one on February 2nd, this Saturday at the music school, if anybody happened to want to drop in and see what is the proposal for PODS is. It was interesting. I think it would be worth your time. I attended an APC on January 30th, just last night. And again, PODS was the main topic. And basically the same concerns were repeated by the members of the APC, but the APC made a very clear statement that they were in favor of it continuing as is. So, at the end of the meeting, I asked them if they'd like me to brief them on active issues here, and so I did. So things that might be coming down to them, and they were quite appreciative of that. So it worked out quite nicely, and I asked them their opinion on some of the things, which was good. So I enjoyed doing that. on top of being very busy, I attended three additional 7 to 9 at night meetings. One of them was the APC. The other ones were the Harbor Authority and the Pender Harbor Days. I kind of enjoyed both of them because I had my SCRD hat on, so I had absolutely no action items. Very nice. But Pender Harbor Days is going ahead again this year. It'll be August 2nd to 4th for anybody that's interested. And I've been dealing with, I call it a perfect storm. It's a local resident that someone parked a car in front of his property with no license plates. They then parked a boat on a trailer with no license plates. They then parked a herring skiff and took the trailer away and left it on blocks across the other side of the road instead of in front of his property. And 2 properties down, there's a house that's rented, and it is right full of junk. So everything in this little block that nothing I can do about, but I have to sit and get. They ask for help, what I can do, and really it points out to Director Ty's motion. We need to have some tools to look after these kind of things. People are getting smart about the fact you can drop your junk and it can stay there. And it's not, I've never seen anything though like that, everything for one guy. So that's my report. Except I attended all the meetings all you guys did. Oh, sorry, I just wanted to leave with, I'm going to go to Parksville because I want to attend the returning directors portion of those meetings. I thought they'd be quite interesting. So, and also because I'm on the AVIC solid waste, I'd like to get to know the other directors there as well ahead of the meeting and do a little schmoozing. So I'm going to go there. So I'm glad to see you guys are going there. We're going to have one reception that overlaps there. So we'll get to share hors d'oeuvres. Anyways, that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have derelict boats all over the land as well as the water, it sounds like. So I'm last on the list. I think I've been at pretty much everything that everyone else has. So I'll just share a few thoughts. I really appreciated the Caros blanket exercise. That was incredible. And I'm glad that we had so many of our staff members were able to be there. It was very moving. The LGLA forum was a good chance for the rural directors and Director Julius. We had a really good chance to learn a lot as well as get to know each other better and try and figure out why Tupperware gets stolen out of trucks and parkades. Yep, there's the story. And then, but it was, and having gone into a couple of the returning director forums, which I think Director McMahon did as well, and then we also attended a environmental forum after the rest of the conference was over, and that was really really good to learn about more about climate change, what can be done. And very informative. I've had one of my residents who actually is a former rural director from quite a few years ago. Elise Rudland took me on a tour of Half Moon Bay, and we talked about some timeline issues on when things had come up and when things, her recollection, and which is really great to have that history piece. The naloxone training earlier this week was really good to have. I think a little more emotionally than what I thought. Because we had a couple of the peers were there to provide our training, and they spoke a bit to what they. Some of their experiences, and it might be something to consider for our recreation sites for any of our park staff if they're not, trained in it. There is an online training portion. It's so easy. And I know Seashelt has their Parks and Rec staff are trained in the naloxone training. Yeah, 2 years ago. So yeah, if it's something that we can do. And then Seashelt Library Board meeting, attended my first one of those, which was great. They're a very engaged bunch. And yesterday's forestry tour was it was a long day. It was about 7 hours, and it was very appreciated by the forestry professionals that attended or that hosted it for us, and they were cautiously optimistic, they said, because they haven't had a chance to speak with local government. There hasn't they haven't felt listened to for quite a while, so for a couple of decades. So it was a really good conversation starter, and I had let on that I have a lot of other directors that would have liked to have been part of this, and there's so much that we didn't do. We only probably did half of the tour that we had planned because we were having such a good conversation about the overview of the Sunshine Coast and a bit of the history and finding out what some of their challenges were and looking at ways if we can support. There's so many jobs in our community, and they're really good paying jobs that are supported by the industry. And these are people that live in our community, so they live and work within our community. And as Director Seeger said, the amount of the logs that are coming in and being sorted are coming from up and down the coast, down there and in Port Mellon. So it was really interesting, and I can't wait until the mill is open here and we can get a good tour of it while it's in operation. So quite excited, and everybody was so open and welcome to having us there. So that was great. And then, of course, speaking with the CAO of BC Ferries, that was promising. He was very, very open to hear and speak more with us. And then just to make a mention of Dakota Ridge, the article from the chair that goes in the local newspaper, the next one is on Dakota Ridge. And if we can, there might even be a picture of the chair doing a snow angel instead of the usual headshot. So I think that's already been submitted by Cecilia. So anyways, yes. So that's it for director's reports. We have no new business. Yay! We will be going in camera, so I'll just go through the in camera and and that piece, and then we'll open it up to our Sophie for conversation. So that the public be excluded from attendance at the meeting in accordance with Section 91A, C, K, and 2B of the Community Charter, personal information about identifiable individual, labor relations, and other employee relations, negotiations, and related discussion respecting the proposed provision of a municipal service, and the consideration of information received and held in confidence relating to the negotiations between the municipality and a provincial government or the federal government or both. So if I can have a motion for that, please. So moved and seconded. Thank you. All those in favor? Motion carries. So Sophie, any questions for us? You've been here for like ever. Okay. I have a few friends in the forest industry, so I actually went to him and I said I want to take a few of our directors around and show them, I want to know more about the forest industry on the coast, and so he helped to facilitate that. it's, do you want to take it? I'll allow.